Hey folks, Fernando doing a video for the more survivalists, and in this video I'd like to address when is it that a revolver is better than a semi-automatic pistol. 6 instances in which that's the case. Now, before I continue, let me just say, if I hear one more time that's about personal preference, I'm not even joking, I'm going to be slashing my wrists. It's not about personal preference, it's about having an understanding of the technical aspects of each system and knowing what it can offer and how it applies to different people. Not everyone's opinion is important because some of them are not actually educated. It's not people that have true understanding of what they're talking about, and they often bring in little pieces of data, information, and mix up into a ball of true nonsense. One of the most common ones is you never need more than 6 rounds, right? Whenever someone is a strong proponent of revolver, say, statistically speaking, the average shooting is no more than 4 or 5 rounds, which may be the case, but what they're completely overlooking is that many of those statistics are including suicides, where it's obviously just 1 shot fired, homicides, again 1 shot, and they're overlooking the many cases in which people have honestly ran out of ammunition. I know instance of a case in Argentina where a police officer using a Ballester Molina, which is similar to a 1911, which means 7+1 rounds of 45 ACP. In a shooting, he ran out of ammunition, he was wounded and could only use one of his hands and was not properly trained in single-handed reloading. When the bad guys saw that he was out of ammo, they just walked and just executed him. And more recently, there was a case of a police officer in the United States using a Glock 45 ACP pistol, and he was actually a firearms instructor. He got into a gunfight with just one more individual. He ran out of ammunition, reloaded, shot all his magazines. He went through 2 spare magazines. He landed many hits, actually most of them were hits, but with a very dedicated opponent and bad enough luck, it was just barely enough to put him down. From that moment on, he switched from a 45 ACP Glock to a Glock 9mm. In his own words, understanding that shot placement was actually an amount and ammunition capacity combined with correct shot placement was more important than just having a bigger bullet. But let's get to this. Now, the number one most common case in which a revolver is clearly a better option than a semi-automatic pistol is due to lack of training. Now, when people ask me when asking for advice, in consulting regarding what is that's going to be working best for them, in most cases the answer for me in those specific cases is a revolver. And the reason is that for most people, okay, they're not going to be training sufficiently so as to be proficient with this type of firearm. Now, if you're going to be telling me that you are going to take self-defense training classes, practicing frequently, then no doubt whatsoever, same for any law enforcement and military force around the world, get yourself a good semi-automatic handgun. Now, for most people, the truth is that they're going to be buying a gun for home defense, and they're going to be taking a box of ammo to the range, shooting maybe half of it with some basic instructions on how to not shoot themselves, and that's going to be it. They're going to be leaving it somewhere, forgetting about it, maybe, if lucky, shooting it once a year, not even that. Most gun owners are that kind of person. For that kind of people, the best gun is a revolver. Why? Simply because there's less things to go wrong. With a good semi-automatic gun, you still have to worry about having a loaded chamber. These things happen very often. Even trained individuals, especially when there's a manual safety, they forget about the safety. They forget that they were carrying with an empty chamber for whatever reason, which you never should. If you're carrying your gun, it has to be with a round in a chamber already, and I don't believe in automatic pistols with safeties. Revolvers don't have safeties, perfectly safe. But that's the kind of thing that often goes wrong when combined the wrong weapon with the wrong person, meaning a person that's not going to be having sufficient training so as to be proficient with this type of firearm. Number 2 would be physical impairments. You're talking about maybe a very small frame, weak, or maybe someone that has a medical condition, they're just not strong enough to work the slide. This happens, older people as well, may be the case. So if you're not strong enough so as to securely work the slide of your gun, you really should not go for a semi-automatic pistol. Even if you're barely capable of doing so, if you're barely capable because you're just not strong enough just to do it more securely, you have to keep in mind that in a stressful situation such as a gunfight, and a violent confrontation in general, your fine motor skills will be impaired, so you may struggle considerably with that. Much better served with a revolver instead. I mean, there's even people that have just one arm, you know, because of accidents, because of whatever is it that happened to them. If you have just one arm, one hand to use, get yourself a revolver. It's going to be, of course, the best option for you. Number 3 would be storage. In terms of a gun that you're intending to just keep stored, maybe as a secondary backup gun around the house, maybe a gun that you're keeping in the safe. If your idea is to leave that gun loaded and just forget about it until one day you pick it up and need it to work, in that case, again, the revolver is the best option. The thing is, guys, years go by amazingly fast. When you leave something and you forget about it, 5-10 years later, you are more likely to have problems with a semi-automatic gun, because the part that fails the most in auto pistols is the magazine. Usually that's the case. Now, technology has advanced to a point where these are boringly reliable. Especially Glock magazines are great. I mean, I've even had 1911 magazines that this is something that I've done myself. I've loaded them, left them loaded for several years. 4 or 5 years later, still run as if nothing. But still, it does not change the fact that this is still the most likely part to fail in a gun. And if you're going to be leaving it fully compressed, it should not happen, but there's always a chance of the magazine setting. Maybe there's rust involved depending on your environment. Maybe the ammunition corroded if you're thinking of or even tarnished a bit, or bad enough over the years that it's kind of sticking a little bit, even though the magazine is fine. All these little things, when you have a compressed magazine for so many years, that is a good case in which a revolver also would be a better option. Number 4 would be for hunting and outdoors activities where you're considering self-defense against animals. In general, you have revolvers chambered for more powerful rounds. You have, I mean, 357 is a pretty powerful round, and you have the option in a revolver of feeding any type of projectile without a problem, some of the heavier slugs without an issue. But also you have, of course, 44 Magnum, 45 Colts, you have 454, 500. All of these really powerful rounds, you're going to be finding them in revolvers. They're not really nearly as common or chambered in truly practical guns. You have your Desert Eagles, but you're talking about, you know, very huge guns that are not really practical. For a practical, big bore, powerful gun, you're thinking of maybe an Alaskan guy that needs a powerful revolver for bear. That's your choice. Also for hunting, if you're going to be hunting with a handgun, you're more likely than not going to be gravitating towards a revolver. More powerful rounds, and usually they already come so as to fit them with a scope much easier than an auto pistol. Number 5 would be 22 long rifle, and here what I'm talking about is that in general, rimfire ammo is not nearly as reliable and as dependable as the centerfire rounds, 9mm, 40 and such. The reason is that, especially when you're buying in bulk, and this is very typical, if you have a 22 gun, you're gonna be wanting to fire cheap ammo. Now, if you have an automatic pistol in 22, if there's an improperly primed round, and you just the firing pin hits and it doesn't fire, or if it's lightly loaded and hasn't got enough recoil so as to work the slide, all of those things that are very much likely to fail in an auto pistol, that's not an issue in a revolver. If it just hits and it doesn't go off, you just keep on pulling the trigger. Next time, probably it's going to be firing. It happened more than once to me with 22 rounds that were improper. That the the rimless, just hit it in one place, you move it a little bit, and next time you hit it, it just fires. All those things really not a problem with a revolver. So if you really need your 22 handgun to work, most likely you want to be getting yourself a good 22 revolver. Finally, in number 6, I would think of a situation where there's a SHTF scenario where ammunition is not really as dependable. Here I'm talking about maybe, ammo that you come across from different, not completely trustful providers. I'm talking about somewhat improperly reloaded ammunition or reloaded ammo of mediocre quality, so as to put it some way. If that's the case in an auto pistol, it's going to be giving you failures very often. Now those same rounds may go through an entire cylinder in a revolver without a problem. If it's lightly loaded, if the projectile is not perfectly shaped, if it's of an odd shape that it is not feeding correctly in an auto pistol, all of those things not an issue with revolvers. And also, there's many of them. This is a manual run MR73, which is an excellent revolver, and this gun is also sold with a cylinder for 9mm. So if you have this one and you have the 9mm cylinder, you can use 38 Special, which is very common, 357 Magnum, of course. All 357 Magnum revolvers shoot also 38 Special, which is the same thing, just a little bit shorter. But with that spare cylinder, you can shoot 9mm as well, which gives you a ton of versatility. So guys, those would be the 6 cases in which a revolver is actually better than an auto pistol. It's going to be all for now. Remember to subscribe and hit that little bell button, because if not, you're not going to be getting any notifications for my channel. Take care, have a great day, see you in the next video.